Hello, everybody, and welcome back. The Asian technology sector is particularly in the focus of investors. Not least, the conflict between the US and China is changing the technology supply chains. We talk about this and other topics with YT Boon, head of Thematic Asia and portfolio manager of the 5G Connectivity Fund at Neuberger, Berman. A warm welcome, YT.
Hi.
YT, the US is trying to cut China off from high technology through the chip ban. What effects do you observe for the Chinese economy?
So far, the impact is minimal. The US is trying to cut off in terms of leading edge semiconductor technologies on China, which China originally doesn't have too much access on. The real impact at the moment is limiting China's development of really the next generation technology, such as the next generation of AI or deep learning. China now has issues having access to the most leading edge semiconductor chips and also equipment. So there is actually limited impact at the moment, but longer term, there will definitely be some impact.
Hi there, just a 2-second break. Before we continue with the video, just make sure to subscribe to our channel now to not miss out any updates. Thank you very much and enjoy the video now.
So China is trying to bring its own semiconductor industry up to world standards in order to reduce its dependence on others. How realistic is this plan and how quickly will this happen?
If we think about the semiconductor industries, it's really, two parts. Number one, the leading edge, the computationally intensive semiconductors. The second part is the traditional, more analog type of semiconductors, which is what we call the lower ends. Now, China, given the bans, especially on the leading edge and equipment access, China will have issues. It will not be realistic for China to continue to develop the most leading edge semiconductor technologies. But for the more traditional semiconductors that's related more to, like, say, power, that's more related to analog, those China will have no issues. So I think with the new incremental measures or methods, applied to chip bans, China will have some issues. You would say like half of it will not work down the line unless China have ways to get access to the leading edge technologies.
To what extent have the harsh COVID restrictions in China led to a resorting of technology value chains in Asia? And what consequences have you been observing?
That's a good question. Because of COVID restrictions, supply chains have been impacted. And there's obviously a reconfiguration of the technology supply chain. One of the most obvious is the semiconductor supply chain. Not only that, now we're seeing this spreading into areas such as the electric vehicle, battery supply chain, and so forth. So we've seen, for example, the last couple of years, a new strategy by many companies called China Plus One. Many companies used to only manufacture in China. Now they will have a second backup plan. For example, Apple used to only manufacture their iPhones or iPads in China. Now they're starting to manufacture them also in India, in Vietnam, and so forth. So there are some reconfigurations of the value chain that's happening over the last couple of years.
In which areas will technological value creation in China change? Which industries and companies may migrate to other countries?
The most obvious one that has already started migrating is the semiconductor industry. So, for example, many European or US semiconductor companies have manufacturing bases in China. But given the bans, given the risk, given the supply chain reconfiguration, they're starting to migrate to other countries. For example, as I mentioned, to Vietnam, to countries like Thailand, Malaysia, and so on, to kind of mitigate the risk. In fact, in terms of the reconfiguration, we're also starting to see companies that has manufacturing base in Taiwan also trying to do the same, right? It's just a risk mitigation plan for many European and US companies. Actually, the same applies to China. China also wants to have a backup plan outside of China. So they're also doing the same thing in ASEAN countries or, in Malaysia, Thailand, and so on.
China is moving up the value chain. So what are the consequences for the economy? Which companies and industries will be promoted and belong the future?
I think given the leadership change over the last year, China will make some changes, I think, in terms of their key focuses. But over the longer term, we expect China to continue to want to, drive up the value chain, move up and dominate in a few areas. I think one area that China's already having a strong dominance, which is areas like renewable energy, which has a lot to do with technologies, whether it's electric vehicle batteries or solar technologies. China will continue to move up on that. And the second area is independence, or having independence in semiconductors. It will be a tough job given the limited access to leading edge technologies. But I think having a large population, having a large data set, China will continue to develop the next generation AI, the next generation kind of like next generation ChatGPT, if you think about it that way.
What technological trends and disruptions will set the agenda for the next 5 years in Asia? And what investment opportunities will this create for investors in general, and of course for you and your role as a portfolio manager as well?
I think the China plus one kind of movement, migration of or extension of the manufacturing supply chain in outside of China will be an opportunity. As we can see, for example, like large semiconductor companies like TSMC is building new fabs in the US. Now, this is actually bringing a lot of new opportunities for Asian companies that are going along with TSMC to build new fabs in the US, because in the US, there is, for example, no supply chain companies there. So TSMC has to bring their supply chain, from Taiwan, from Asia to the US. So this brings new opportunities for many Asian companies. At the same time, over the next 3 to 5 years, I think new technologies such as the metaverse, new augmented reality or virtual reality type of technologies is something that Asia has, a strong manufacturing and creativity and digitalization supply chain. So these are very interesting opportunities that we see are, really taking place on the ground in Asia.
So this was YT Boon from Neuberger Berman on technology, supply chains and disruptions in Asia. Thank you very much for being with us today, YT.
Thank you.